Cameron Cade played football for a living from an early age. He never left the TV during matches. His idol was Isaiah White. This quarterback was a true legend, and not just in South Central. He was unstoppable, as if he had injected himself with a serum that turned him into Superman. Cameron's father supported his love of sports. He tried to raise the boy to be a real fighter, capable of breaking through to the top, standing at the football Olympia next to legendary players. And Cam dedicated his entire life to fulfilling his father's expectations. However, after the death of her father, this did not break Cameron. He continued to play and reached heights that other boys his age could only dream of. At the same time, rumors began to circulate in the sports press that Isaiah White might retire. He is no longer at the age where he can compete with young people, and the old trauma is felt. Cameron was preparing for a new stage in his career. But one day, while he was training on the field, a man in a strange suit approached him and hit him on the head. Cam was then advised to pause football. He has brain damage, and if he suffers another head injury, his football career will be forgotten forever. However, the excitement around his person did not subside. Journalists and sports analysts wondered whether Cameron would be able to continue playing. His friends were worried that the young man had missed his chance, and his mother was worried about his health. In this chaos, Cam learns that Isaiah White wants to meet with him. "We'll be in the damn league." White invites Cameron over. There is everything you need for rehabilitation and preparation for future matches. Given rumors that White was looking for a successor, Cameron was very flattered by the invitation. Now he has a real opportunity to return to the game without career consequences. Cam grabs her and goes to visit his idol. At the entrance to White's house, Cameron is met by crazy fans, and they look suspiciously creepy. Marjorie especially attacks the car driven by Cam. The interior of a legendary defender looks mysterious and even frightening. The house appears empty, but Cameron manages to find the owner. He introduces the newcomer to his team and begins some light training. Men throw a ball, have fun, and wander around. White then introduces Cameron to his doctor, Marco. This person is responsible for the physical health of the star. He inspects the new one and sends him to rest. Cameron later meets White's wife, a white girl named Elsie. She offers the young protector a stone to comfort him. Life begins to seem like paradise to Cam. At his idol's house, he is treated first class, and White himself treats him like a father, although there are small nuances. For example, White donates blood, which is then injected into Cameron against his will. At the same time, Marco pretends that receiving the blood of a star is a privilege. But this was only the first day. Then some very scary movie starts. Cameron is woken up at dawn and forced to train. White doesn't spare him, but still gives him a break when Cam is tired. White's behavior wasn't the strangest thing in practice. Cameron began having terrible hallucinations. It seemed to him that this was due to blood injections given by the doctor. At the next training session, unknown boys joined them. White said his group of players has nothing to lose. They really didn't care. The palest of them was placed in front of a device that threw balls, and they started hitting him in the face every time Cameron made an inaccurate throw. In such a stressful environment, Cam had to throw again and again until he hit. The pale-faced man was then released, but he looked surprisingly happy. During practice, White acted like Cam had said something about his mom. He was extremely aggressive and assertive. "Clip your snot into your fist. There's a stone here." But, oddly enough, this technique works. When he produced his first result, Cameron was taken seriously. They pushed him into training, injected him with all sorts of nonsense, and through psychological influence made him an inadequate athlete. At one point, what was happening began to seem unreal to Cameron. White's methods paid off. Cam awakened the beast within himself and was able to forget about the attitudes that had been instilled in him earlier. White was extremely pleased with these changes. Only with the change did Cameron's hallucinations intensify. He thought they were trying to kill him. The furnishing of the legendary defender's house only enhanced the effect of the visions. One day, Cam decided to call home to wish his mother a happy birthday. But he promised to sever all ties with the outside world, and when he was caught on the call, Cameron hung up. He did this because a doctor suddenly appeared from the darkness. Mark hinted that what's happening with Cam is just the beginning. The most interesting is yet to come. While they were talking, Marjorie watched them from outside, and she was extremely unhappy that Cam was now living next to her idol. She managed to get into the house and then crawl under the bench in the sauna and wait for Cameron to arrive. And he only came with White. After waiting for Wyatt to leave, Marjorie attacked Cam. He turned out to be stronger. He threw the fan on the bench and began to choke her. He freed her when Marjorie lost consciousness. White soon appeared. The fan got up to kiss him, and he had to throw her into the wall. After the fall, Marjorie lost consciousness. White sent Cameron on vacation, while he stayed to remove this biological waste from his home. Meanwhile, Cam runs into Elsie, and she asks him out on a date with the girls. He was against it, but agreed anyway. And then he himself did not have time to understand how he found himself without clothes, surrounded by beauties. In the morning, White woke him up. He was jealous and thought Cameron slept with his chick. Cam was scared and generally seemed unsure. And this upset White even more than Elsie's supposed betrayal. He stated that Cameron must become a real killer, become a being who does not care about others. This is the only way to get to the top. To awaken the killer's instincts in the newcomer, White invites him on a kind of hunt. They take weapons with them and throw them at mannequins displayed in the desert. At the same time, Cameron is not very good at photography. A new mannequin is then brought in, but there appears to be an object inside the suit. White offers to shoot him, and Cam will handle task. After his shot, the target falls. Training and preparation for the match continue. But one day, White invites a photographer to photograph Cameron for sports magazines. This is also part of the game. When the match is over and the player leaves the field, he will have to talk to journalists and pose for major publications. Cam needs to get used to this so he doesn't lose face when it comes to actual interviews. White trains the rookie to become not just a star, but a great one. Cameron was bombarded with questions from journalists. They gave him first-class clothes and made him talk about himself. And then he broke. Cam remembered his father, the way he trained him, the hopes he had. Everything Cameron does now is for his father and his family. This is his main motivation. When the interviews were over, Elsie turned to Cam and invited him to a meeting with the big bosses. They had to look at the person and decide whether he would fit into their environment. White refused to go with his wife and heir. There was still work to be done here. Elsie took Cameron to a private club where only the football elite hung out. Dr. White Marco was also here. Elsie introduced the boy to the owner of the club for which he would play. In addition to him, Agent Cameron has also been invited to the club. He was simply glad that his ward was preparing to enter the major leagues, because this promised both of them significant income. Cameron received an extremely warm welcome. They got him drunk and let him roll around on the dance floor. At this point, he started hallucinating again. By the way, he saw Marco's severed head on the table. He became ill and woke up in White's house within 4, which sent the legend's blood into Cam's vein. When Cameron came to his senses, he realized that he had gone too far. He stopped being himself, became a toy in the hands of others, and now they could do whatever they want with him. He was very sick, and only one more injection helped. After Cam found White, he explained to his future successor that he would have to fight for a place in Olympia. It was far from the first in this line of legendary players. Each subsequent candidate for this role was drenched in the blood of the previous idol. They consider it a gift from the gods. They formed a new star so that the old one could be replaced without loss. However, there was one final step left. The challenger must fight the legend and defeat him. Only then will he earn the right to sign a contract with the club. The two defenders met in an epic battle. But despite White's strength and endurance, youth and tension prevailed. Cameron grabbed his football helmet and took the winning kick. He then walked out into the open, where he was greeted as a hero. There were members of the club's board, his agent, and Elsie. They offered to sign a contract, but Cameron was hesitant. The old people were unhappy. Cam's agent then stepped forward. He began to put pressure on the man's conscience to remember his father and persuade him to sign. But even then, Cameron refused. He picked up the weapon left on the ground and began to kill. When he tried to cut off his head, he deflected the blow and stabbed himself. Taking up the sword, Cam begins to reduce the number of millionaires in the United States. The owners of Elsie's club and other people involved in this sect have disappeared. Cameron then turned to his agent. He tried to escape, and Cam saved his life. However, the agent was already doomed. Evil forces came for his soul. He was pulled into the center of the circle, and then the frame of the glasses exploded. But Cameron couldn't see him anymore. He turned around, and, without fear of anything else, he went to the exit from the stadium, where his career as a legendary football player was to begin.